The notification popped up on a Tuesday evening, a name from a past I'd tried to bury. Leo's smiling face, forever 17, was in my message requests. The problem was, Leo drowned in Blackwater Lake last summer. I dropped my phone like it had burned me. Skittered across the kitchen counter, the screen still glowing with that impossible profile picture. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. It had to be a sick joke. Someone had hacked his old account. Some twisted grief troll preying on his friends. I grabbed the phone again, my thumb trembling as I opened the message. It wasn't a taunt. It was a plea. Hey, it's me. Please. You have to come. The words were typed in his unique, lazy shorthand, missing apostrophes and capital letters. The way he always texted. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. I typed back, my fingers clumsy. Who is this? This isn't funny. The reply was instantaneous. It's Leo. I'm cold. The water is so dark. I can't find the surface. A wave of nausea washed over me. I could almost smell the dank, fishy scent of the lake, feel the oppressive humidity of that July night. I remembered the search boats, their lights cutting beams through the inky blackness. I remembered the terrible, waiting silence. Stop it, I typed, tears blurring my vision. Leave me alone. I'm not alone down here. The next message read, there's something else. It has my legs. It won't let me go. Please, come to the lake. Come alone. You have to see. See what? I wanted to scream, but another message followed, a voice memo this time. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the play button. A deep, primal part of me begged not to. I pressed it. At first, there was only the hollow, distorted gurgle of water, then a faint, desperate scratching sound, like nails on stone, and underneath it, a low, rhythmic thump, thump, thump. That was too slow and too wet to be a heart. It was the sound of something massive and bloated, pulsing in the deep. The recording ended with a choked, watery gasp that I knew in my soul was Leo's. I didn't sleep. Every creak of the house was a footstep on the dock. Every rush of wind through the trees was that wet, pulsing thump. The messages kept coming, every hour, on the hour. The same plea. Come alone. You have to see. By 3 a.m., a strange resolve had replaced my terror. This wasn't a prank. This was something else, something that had crawled out of the lake's muddy bottom and learned to use a dead boy's voice. I had to know. I had to see it for myself, to prove it wasn't real, to silence the part of me that was starting to believe. I drove to Blackwater Lake as the first gray light of dawn bled into the sky. The air was frigid, carrying the rotten sweet smell of decaying reeds. The lake was a sheet of polished slate, perfectly still and unnervingly silent. No birds sang. I stood on the end of the warped wooden dock, the same dock we'd jumped from 100 times, and I felt a dread so complete it was like a physical weight. My phone buzzed in my hand. A final message. Look down. My breath hitched. I didn't want to. I forced myself to lean over the edge, peering into the dark water. For a moment, I saw only my own pale, terrified reflection. Then the water seemed to clear, or my vision adjusted to the gloom. He was there. Maybe 10 feet down. Leo. His eyes were wide open, milky and unseeing. His skin was waxy and bleached white, his hair floating like a dark halo around his head. He was suspended, anchored to the bottom, and something was wrapped around his legs. Something thick and ropey and dark, like a massive, submerged root system or the tentacle of some unthinkable leviathan. It pulsed gently, rhythmically, holding him fast. As I watched, paralyzed, Leo's corpse moved. His arm, stiff with rigor mortis, slowly rose from his side. His index finger, the nail blackened and broken, pointed directly at me. And then, his jaw unhinged, and a stream of bubbles escaped his lips, carrying a sound that shouldn't have been possible, a distorted, waterlogged whisper that broke the surface right at my feet. You see, I stumbled back, falling hard on the splintered wood. I scrambled to my feet and ran, never looking back, the sound of that whisper chasing me all the way to my car. I never went back to the lake. I changed my number, deleted all my social media. But sometimes, late at night, my personal phone, the one only my bank and my mother have the number for, will light up with a notification from an unknown number. It's never a message, just a single, blurry image file taken from deep underwater, looking up through the murk at the silhouette of a person standing on a dock, and attached to it, the faint, almost inaudible sound of a slow, wet, pulsing thump. The trail was supposed to be a simple 2-mile loop through Maple Grove, but my phone's GPS now insists we've only walked 100 feet. Even though my aching legs and the 3 sunsets we've watched scream that we've been lost. Here for days, it started with the silence, the birdsong and the distant rush of the highway just stopped. The air grew still and heavy, smelling of damp rot and sweet, decaying leaves. Ben, my hiking partner, pulled out his phone. "No signal," he said, his voice still loud in the hush. "GPS is spinning." We shrugged and pressed on, assuming the trail would curve back soon. An hour later, the same giant, lightning-blasted oak tree stood in our path, a gnarled sentinel we were certain we'd passed already. That's when the first flicker of cold dread touched my spine. We tried to backtrack. The path behind us was gone, swallowed by a thicket of thorny bushes that hadn't been there minutes before. The trees seemed to press closer, their branches knitting together to block the fading sun, casting the forest floor into a perpetual, green-tinged twilight. We'd walk for what felt like hours, our breath puffing in the suddenly cold air, only to find Ben's discarded protein bar wrapper lying on a bed of moss exactly where he'd dropped it hours before. We were walking in a circle that was getting tighter, smaller. On the second day, the hunger and thirst set in. We'd finished our water that first night. The streams we found looked clear and inviting, but the water tasted metallic, like licking a battery, and left a coppery film on our tongues. That was also the day we noticed the trees. We'd blaze a mark on a trunk with Ben's pocket knife, walk for 10 minutes in a straight line, and find the same marked tree directly in front of us, the scar fresh and weeping sap. The birch groves to our left would slowly, imperceptibly, shift to our right when we weren't looking. The very geography of the place was fluid, malevolent, rearranging itself to keep us trapped. Ben broke on the third day. He started screaming at the trees, hurling rocks into the silent woods. The rocks never made a sound when they landed. They were just absorbed. His screams were swallowed by the moss and the leaves, deadened into nothing. He collapsed sobbing, while I stared at my phone. The screen still glowed cheerfully. Total distance traveled, 0.2 miles. The date hadn't changed. That's when we heard the first sound, other than our own voices, in 3 days. It was a soft, shuffling drag, like something heavy being pulled over dry leaves. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once. We scrambled to our feet, back to back, hearts hammering. The shuffling grew closer, circling us. We saw nothing, just the endless, watching trees. Then, the whispers started. They were faint, woven into the rustle of the leaves above. Not words, but intentions. A sense of cold curiosity. A patient, hungry waiting. They were the forest, and the forest was aware of us. Ben couldn't take it. He let out a raw, strangled cry and just started running, crashing through the undergrowth in a blind panic. I tried to follow, but the trees seemed to shift, a wall of pines springing up to block my path. I heard his footsteps fade, then stop. The silence rushed back in, deeper and more profound than before. I am alone now. The light is fading again, marking another day that my phone refuses to acknowledge. The shuffling sound has returned. It's closer this time. I can see the ferns trembling about 20 feet away, swaying as if something is moving through them, something I can't quite see. The whispers are clearer now, too. They're not coming from the trees anymore. They're coming from just behind me. I don't dare turn around. I can feel a cold presence at my back. A spot of freezing air in the already chilly evening. The ferns in front of me are still shaking. Getting closer. We're not alone in here. We never were. The forest doesn't just keep you lost. It keeps you. And I think it's finally my turn to be kept. We found his camera deep in the woods. The last photo is a blurry shot of him running, with something massive right behind him. But what really unsettled us was the timestamp. It was taken 12 hours after we found his body. My brother Nate went missing during a solo hike in the Wyndmere Forest last October. He was experienced, careful, not the kind to take dumb risks. When he didn't check in after 2 days, I knew something was wrong. The park rangers organized a search party. I insisted on joining. I couldn't just sit around waiting for news. Wyndmere's dense tall evergreens crowd the sky, blotting out the sun, and even in daylight, it feels like dusk. The deeper you go, the quieter everything gets, like the forest holding its breath. 3 days into the search, we found his pack torn open near a stream. No blood. Just shredded straps, scattered supplies, and a camera still intact, buried under damp leaves like someone had tried to hide it. The rangers marked the spot, and we kept going. We found Nate the next morning. He was curled against the base of a tree, face pale, eyes wide open. No wounds, no signs of struggle, but his expression, God, it was like he'd seen something that broke him, something that didn't belong in this world. I took the camera home. The rangers said they'd get around to analyzing it, but I couldn't wait. That night, I plugged in the SD card. The photos started normal. Shots of the trail, the sunrise through the trees, close-ups of mushrooms and moss. He always loved that kind of stuff. Then, the last 5 pictures. The first was off, taken at night. Nate's hand was visible in the flash, pointing toward a tree. Something was behind it, blurry tall. Could have been a trick of the light, but it made my skin crawl. Second photo, same angle, but closer. Still blurry. The shape now had a faint outline. Long limbs. No face. Third, total darkness. The flash didn't go off. Just the faint smear of movement. Like he was running. Fourth, Nate's face in the corner, eyes wide in panic, mouth open mid-scream. Behind him, something massive. Shadowy. Looming in the background. No clear features, but you could feel it. And then the fifth. The one that still keeps me up. It's a shot of the forest floor, slightly tilted, like the camera had been dropped. But in the frame in the background was a silhouette. Not quite human. Not quite animal. At all. 2. Wrong. Almost as if the trees bent around it. The thing is, that photo was timestamped 12 hours after we found Nate's body. I thought it was a glitch. I checked the metadata, it matched. Down to the second. Someone or something took that photo long after Nate was gone. And ever since I brought that camera home, strange things have started happening. My apartment's on the 3rd floor, but every night I hear something tapping at the windows. I stopped checking after the first time because I swear I saw branches moving, like hands. Sometimes I wake up and the camera is on. I never touch it. Once, I woke up to find it in my hand. Open. Recording. I deleted everything. Or tried to. But the final photo, that last one, it always comes back. Even when I wipe the card. Even when I destroy it. I bought a new computer. New phone. New everything. And last night, the photo appeared on my living room TV. I hadn't turned it on. It flickered to life on its own, just past midnight, screen glowing with that same forest floor. And the figure. Only now, it's closer. Its shape, less blurry. I can almost make out a face, almost. I'm leaving tonight. Taking nothing. Burning the rest. But before I go, I need to warn you, if you find a camera in the woods, leave it where it lies. Some things don't want to be seen, and some want to see you back. I knew I'd missed the last bus the second I saw the empty stop, just me, the flickering streetlight, and the wind pushing trash across the cracked pavement. But when I turned around to check for a cab, everyone else at the station was gone, like they'd slipped right out of existence. It was 1:27 a.m. when the schedule said the final Route 12 would come crawling up the hill. I'd worked late too late and hadn't planned for the rain or the biting cold that settled into my jacket like needles. The bus stop was tucked under a single flickering lamp, buzzing so loud it almost drowned out the distant hum of the city. The platform should have been packed with night shift stragglers and drunks heading home. But there was no one. Just a half-finished coffee cup on the bench and a damp newspaper drifting down the curb. I checked my phone, 1% battery. No signal. Figures. I walked the length of the stop twice, peering down the road for headlights. Nothing but the wet gleam of asphalt and the rustle of dead leaves swirling across the lane. I told myself I'd wait 10 more minutes. 10 more and I'd call a rideshare, charge the trip to my overdraft account. But when my phone finally died in my hand, I felt it, the shift. The quiet thickened, swallowing the usual hum of traffic. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I sat down on the cold bench. That's when I noticed it. Footprints, not mine. Fresh, muddy tracks looping around the edge of the platform, leading right up to the map display. They circled it 3 times, then stopped dead at the far end like whoever made them just vanished. I told myself someone must have just left, maybe a maintenance worker, but there were no tire marks on the slick road, no sound of a car pulling away. The streetlight flickered once, twice, then went out completely. I heard something then, not a bus engine, not footsteps. Breathing, slow, hoarse breathing, coming from behind the glass of the empty ticket booth. I leaned forward, squinting. But the booth was dark inside, just a reflection of the empty street, and my own pale face staring back. I should have left then. Walked into the night, found a diner, called someone, anyone. But my legs felt rooted. The air felt thick, clinging to my skin like damp sheets. A voice crackled over the busted speaker next to the route sign, static at first, then words I almost understood. End of the line. Stay seated. I spun around, expecting to see a bus rolling up, headlights cutting through the mist. Nothing. The breathing behind the ticket glass grew louder, closer. I stepped back, heels hitting the curb. I felt something crunch under my foot, looked down. A bus ticket, soaked and half-torn. My name was printed on it. I never bought a ticket. My heart hammered so hard I tasted copper. I backed away from the booth, eyes starting to the road, hoping for any sign of another soul. And that's when I saw them, shapes, half hidden in the fog drifting down the hill, figures standing motionless along the road's edge. At first I thought they were passengers waiting, like me. But they didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared, shadows with no faces, one by one. They stepped closer to the stop, silent, gliding. I stumbled backward until I hit the bench again. The ticket in my hand felt warm now, damp with sweat. The speaker crackled again. Your bus is here. No engine. No lights. Just the fog swallowing the road until it pressed against my shoes. I can't say why I'm still here, sitting on this bench, ticket clutched in my shaking hand. I could run. I could scream. But I think if I do, they'll follow. Maybe they already have. If you ever find yourself at the Route 12 stop after the last bus leaves, don't wait for the next one. Some rides don't take you home. Story 17. I was a single mother of 1 son, who I'll call. We lived in a decent neighborhood and got by just fine with my salary. David was 8 at the time and full of curiosity and imagination. He'd spend hours drawing, playing with his action figures, or watching cartoons. Every night before bed, we'd read a book together. It was our little ritual. One afternoon, I was folding laundry in the living room when I heard David talking in his room. At first, I thought he was just playing with his toys or maybe talking to himself like he sometimes did. But then I noticed something odd. He was pausing between sentences, as if someone was answering him. Curious, I walked over to his room and knocked gently. He stopped talking immediately. I opened the door and found him sitting on the floor, a bunch of toys scattered around him. Who were you talking to, sweetie? I asked. He looked up at me with wide eyes and smiled. Oh, just my friend. What friend? I asked. thinking maybe one of the neighbor kids had come over without me noticing. David hesitated for a moment, then said, "His name is Nathan. He lives in the closet." I blinked. "In the closet, yeah," he said. "But don't worry, he's nice." He said he likes how I draw. At first, I brushed it off as an imaginary friend. Lots of kids have them, and David was a creative little guy. But over the next few weeks, things got weirder. One night, I went to check on David after he'd gone to bed. When I opened his door, I found him sitting up, staring at the closet. The door was slightly ajar. "David," I whispered. "Why aren't you asleep?" He looked at me and said, "Nathan said not to sleep yet. He wants to show me something." That made me freeze. I walked over and closed the closet door firmly. "Honey, Nathan isn't real. It's just your imagination, okay?" David looked confused, almost hurt. "But he talks to me. He knows things." That night, I barely slept. The next day, I searched his closet thoroughly. There was nothing there, no hidden doors, no crawl spaces. Nothing that could explain what was going on. Then came the night that changed everything. I was asleep when I suddenly woke up, not sure why. I felt this overwhelming sense of dread, like something was terribly wrong. I got up and walked toward David's room. The hallway was darker than usual, and it felt colder. When I reached his door, it was wide open. David was standing in the middle of the room, facing the closet. He was whispering something I couldn't hear. I called out, "David." He turned to me. His eyes glazed over like he was in some kind of trance. "He said you shouldn't be here," David mumbled. Suddenly, the closet door creaked open on its own. I ran to David, grabbed him, and turned to leave, but something slammed the door shut behind me. I screamed and tried to open it, but it felt like someone was holding it shut from the other side. David started crying, snapping out of whatever trance he was in. The room grew colder, and I swear I heard whispering coming from the closet. Not David's voice, another voice, deeper. Angry, I didn't know what else to do, so I shouted, "Leave us alone." The door finally burst open, and I grabbed David and ran to the living room, locking the bedroom door behind us. We stayed on the couch that night with every light on. The next morning, I packed a bag, and we went to stay with my sister across town. I brought in a priest to bless the house before we moved back a few weeks later. After that, David never mentioned Nathan again. It was like he had no memory of any of it. I don't know what was in that closet. Maybe it was just a child's imagination. Or maybe it was something much worse. But one thing I know for sure, imaginary friends shouldn't know things your kid never told them. The first gift was a single, perfect crow feather, placed dead center on my welcome mat. It wasn't the feather that unnerved me, but the faint, sweet smell of turned earth and something vaguely rotten that clung to it. I brushed it off as a weird coincidence. Maybe a bird had dropped it. But the next evening, after my walk through the woods behind my house, my only real escape since the divorce, there was another offering. This time, smooth river stone, dark as a pupil, resting on the porch rail. And again, that cloying, fungal scent. The air around it felt colder, damp, as if a pocket of the forest had drifted onto my property and lingered. I threw the stone back into the tree line, a shiver tracing my spine. The gifts became a nightly ritual, a knot of which shaped like a twisted heart, the cluster of pale mushrooms, their gills soft and pulpy, a dead mouse arranged neatly on a bed of moss, not a mark on it, yet smelling of deep, ancient decay. Each item was more unsettling than the last, each reeked of the loamy, wet darkness of the woods. I stopped my walks. The silence outside my windows, once peaceful, now felt like a hell breath. Paranoia began to curdle in my gut. I installed a motion-activated floodlight. The first night it blazed on, I rushed to the window, my heart hammering. There was nothing there, just the stark white light bleaching my lawn. But in the morning, centered in the cone of light on the porch floor, was a small, woven circlet of vines and pine needles. A crown. The message was clear: your light doesn't scare me. I can still come. I bought cameras, locked my doors an hour before sundown, I stopped sleeping, instead listening to the chorus of crickets and frogs, straining to hear a footfall that never came. The woods, my sanctuary, had become a towering, black wall hiding a silent admirer. Last Tuesday, the gift was different. It was a photograph, curled and damp at the edges. It was a picture of me, taken from the trees at the edge of my property. I was on my porch, drinking coffee, my face blurred by distance and early morning haze. The photo smelled overwhelmingly of rot, as if it had been developed in a vat of swamp water. My blood ran cold. It had been taken after I'd stopped my walks. It was watching me at home. That was the breaking point. I couldn't live like this, a prisoner in my own home, stalked by some unseen thing that worshipped decay. A furious, terrified resolve took hold. I had to confront it. I had to know. That night, I didn't lock the door. I turned off the floodlight. I sat in the dark living room, a heavy flashlight gripped in my hand, and I waited. The hours bled by. The old clock in the hall ticked like a failing heart. Just as the first gray hint of dawn touched the sky, I heard it. Not a footstep, but a soft, dragging sound, like roots being pulled from wet ground. I crept to the front door, my breath shallow. Through the peephole, I saw a shape crouched on my porch. It was man-like, but wrong. Its skin was the texture of bark and pale lichen, and its back was a hunched mound of forest detritus soil, leaves, and fungi. Its long, thin fingers were carefully arranging something on the mat. Rage and terror warred inside me. I threw the door open, the beam of my flashlight striking the figure full in the face. It had no eyes. Just deep, dark hollows packed with rich, black soil. It didn't flinch or startle. It slowly tilted its head, and a sound emerged from it, not from a mouth, but from the creaking of its form, the rustle of its leafy skin. It was the sound of wind through barren branches, the groan of an old tree, and in that organic noise, I heard a word. Friend. It held out its hand. On its palm was a final gift, a locket. My locket. The one I'd lost on a walk months ago. It was caked in mud, the metal pitted and green. I stood there, frozen, the beam of my light shaking violently in my hand. The thing waited, its soil-filled eyes fixed on me, its offering extended. It wasn't threatening. It was courting. It had been watching me in my solitude, and it had chosen me. It thought we were the same. I slowly reached out and took the locket. It was ice cold and left a smear of wet dirt on my palm. The thing made that creaking, groaning sound again, a sigh of satisfaction, and then turned, melting back into the tree line without a sound, becoming one with the shadows. I stood on the porch until the sun was fully up, clutching the filthy locket. I can't leave. This is my home. But I know now, with a certainty that chills me deeper than any fear, that I was wrong. I'm not being stalked. I'm being courted, and it will be back. The landlord swore up and down that apartment 13 had been sealed shut for a decade, but every night at exactly 2 a.m., I am jolted awake by the sound of heavy furniture being dragged across the floor directly above me. It's a brutal, grating noise, the screech of wooden legs fighting against bare floorboards, the heavy thud of something immense being dropped, then the slow, deliberate drag starting all over again. It would last for precisely an hour, then stop as abruptly as it began, leaving a silence that felt heavier, more suffocating than before. I complained to Mr. Henderson, the landlord, a man who smelled of mothballs and stale cigarettes. He just shook his head, his keys jangling. Ain't nobody up there. Son, he'd grumble. Place is empty. Has been since the last tenant. Well, since he left. Pipes. It's just the pipes. But pipes don't drag on wires. The sounds were bad, but the silence that followed was worse. It was during those quiet hours that I'd hear the other things. A faint, wet sniffing sound, like a dog trying to catch a scent, coming from the heating vent. A soft, rhythmic tapping on my ceiling, not from above, but from inside the ceiling, right above my bed. Tap, dot, tap, dot, tap. Like a fingernail on plaster. I started sleeping with the lights on. I bought a white noise machine, but it was useless. The dragging, the sniffing, the tapping, they cut through it all. Sounds meant for my ears only. My world shrank to the four walls of my apartment and the haunted space above them. I stopped going out. I called in sick to work. The perpetual exhaustion painted gray circles under my eyes. This morning, I found the footprints. I'd opened my door to get the milk, and there they were, stark against the dusty, worn carpet of the hallway. They led from the stairwell directly to my door, where they stopped, as if someone had stood there, facing the wood, for a very long time. They were large, barefoot, and caked in a dark, mud-like substance that gave off a faint, coppery smell. But it was their shape that made my blood run cold. They were utterly wrong. The toes were too long, too thin, and they curled forward like grasping talons. The footprints didn't lead away. They just stopped at my threshold. That was the breaking point. I couldn't live like this anymore. I waited until the dragging started again, that familiar 2 a.m. screech from above. But this time, instead of cowering in my bed, a cold, frantic rage took hold. I threw my door open and marched into the hall, heading for the stairwell that led to the 4th floor, to apartment 13. The door to 13 was exactly as the landlord had said, sealed. A heavy-duty padlock hung from a new hasp screwed into the old wood. Dust coated the floor in front of it, but the dragging sound was louder here, vibrating through the door itself, and that smell, the coppery, earthy smell from the footprints, was strongest here, leaking out from under the door. I pressed my ear to the wood. The dragging stopped. The silence that followed was deafening, and I heard it. The soft, wet sniffing sound. It was right on the other side of the door. Something was in there. Something was listening back. I stumbled away, my courage evaporating. I fled back down to my apartment, slammed the door shut, and shoved a chair under the knob. I'm sitting on my couch now, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the tapping to start again. But it's been silent. Too silent. The only sound is a new one, a soft, scraping rustle. It's not coming from above anymore. It's coming from inside the walls, and it's getting closer to the vent. I can see the cover over the heating duct trembling slightly, as if something is pressing against it from the other side, trying to get out, or trying to get in.